The base has dropped on a Friday edition of Soccer Down here. It's December 20th. It is the midst of silly season, and it's gotten very silly. We also have an MLS schedule to talk about that was released late yesterday morning, of course, after the show ended. Soon tease, because, whatever. It's all good. Lots of rumors, lots of things around the league to get into, and I know that you guys out there listening have had a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of takes on the report from The Athletic from Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejskal late yesterday concerning multiple different things with Atlanta United. If you haven't read the report over at The Athletic, here's the highlights. Basically, Atlanta United reevaluating the stance that they won't move Julian Gressel. Multiple MLS clubs have shown interest, quote, over the last several months. The report also says that Atlanta is actively shopping Tito Villalba and Leandro Gonzalez Perez, who has been linked with that move to Xolos. The club wants to move both of those players internationally, not within MLS. The Emerson Heineman contract will need TAM to buy it down, which is not a surprise. The amounts, I guess, maybe are a surprise for some. And this is the quote from the article. One source indicated Heineman will make $800,000, $900,000, and just under $1 million over the next 3 seasons, respectively. And they also said that it was indicated that a mid-six figures transfer fee was needed to get him from Bournemouth. We'll see when the contracts or the salaries become official from the MLSPA. April, May timeframe usually is when that comes out. So that's where things stand, according to reports. Keep that in mind. These are reports. We have seen these things before, and nothing has come of it. We have seen these things before, and things have come of it. That's where you're at right now. And I know people are freaking out. I've seen lots of things even saying, like, oh, forget CONCACAF and forget this and forget that. A couple of things that I would just like to say at the top of this is, if moves happen, you have to expect moves in response to moves happening. Kind of how things go. You sell a player, you're going to bring in a replacement. You have an opening in your roster, you're going to add somebody to fill it. These moves are not going to happen on the cheap. These are not going to be fire sale moves. These are not going to be DC United moves where players leave for nothing. That's not going to happen here. All of these players are in demand in different ways. If things happen, they happen, and you move on. The number one thing here when you run a club at this kind of level is you have to continually stay ahead of your competition. You have to continually manage your roster and your contracts, because contracts come up. Players need more money in a contract that maybe in a salary cap league you don't have to spend or you're not comfortable spending, and these things happen. There's also the CBA negotiation, and that's a factor, and it's not just Atlanta United who has said it's a factor. Garth Lagerwey in The Athletic talked about it a few days ago. It's the trade market in MLS is very strange at the moment because teams don't necessarily know what it's going to look like. I think you can make the safe assumptions based off the current system and very moderate growth to a salary cap and the current idea of TAM, GAM, all that stuff. But anything beyond that, and it's a huge risk to make a big move. So if you have an open spot, yeah, you can make some moves within the league because you know what you had last year. You know what you don't have now. You know what last year's system was. But if you're looking to grow or add salary, it's tough because you don't know. You don't know what it's going to look like. And that was something that Lagerwey pointed out. He's got his capologists, and he's like, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, or it could be this. He's got like 4 different scenarios. And the guy's like, what do you want me to do with this? Because they're all different, and they're not like, it's not like different levels of growth. Like, I'm imagining you could be looking at a system that is the same with expanded numbers. I'm imagining you could be looking at a system that is the same in terms of a cap and GAM, but no TAM. or it's rolled into a cap. You could look at a system that everything's rolled into a cap and the cap increases. You could look at a system that is completely wide open and crazy. You could look at systems probably with different numbers of designated players. It's hard to judge it. So clubs that would show interest in a Julian Gressel right now, for example, and you start to take the different things that are in play here. You take a player who is on a rookie deal and has outperformed the rookie deal, and he's going to get paid in his next contract. That's an obvious assumption. You start to guess what those numbers could be, and I think because of the things Atlanta's said, it's why it's hard to make a deal here, because you don't know how the cap is going to look, or the CBA is going to look, or the allocation money layout is going to look, because he's going from a non-Tamergam player to a player who would probably need that. Now you have teams that don't have designated player slots filled. You have teams that didn't use all of their TAM or GAM or whatever, and they're sitting on a pile of monopoly money. They're in a different situation, and they can make moves that Atlanta couldn't right now. Tito Villalba being shopped is not really a surprise. I don't think anybody took that as such, based off kind of where he fell in the pecking order. The injury issues that slowed him down, I mean, it's a fact. He hasn't been the same player since he started having injury issues, and he didn't look good at the end of the season. The two big games where you needed performances from him at Yankee Stadium and coming off the bench in the playoffs against Toronto, he didn't deliver. So being shopped makes sense. Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez, there's been rumors before. It's not a surprise that there's more rumors. The fact that it's now being said that Atlanta is shopping him is a change in the approach. One thing to keep in mind, and this is something I don't think has been talked about at all. So, Xolos, Tijuana. We've talked about what kind of money they've brought in recent years, and maybe they're in a position where they can spend more than they generally have, although they have spent money on players in the past, and these level of players. Gustavo Bo, for example, who is in MLS now. Gustavo Quinteros, new manager, came from Universidad Católica. He brought his assistant with him, somebody we know. Dario Sala. Dario Sala was the assistant for Tata Martino. He is now in Tijuana. Dario Sala was a candidate to take over at Universidad Católica, and that job ended up going to somebody we also know, Ariel Holan, who was the manager of Ezequiel Barco at Independiente. It is a very small world. But Sala being in Tijuana changes the paradigm a little bit, doesn't it? Changes the idea of wanting players that he knows. He knows Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez. Tito Villalba has not been linked directly with a move to Tijuana, although when that report hit The Athletic yesterday, you had Xolos fans who were like, hey, we had Tito Villalba on loan at the end of 2016. He's available, huh? Oh, Dario Sala knows him. And you start to get those kinds of connections. So keep that in mind. That changes the paradigm. This is not just a random rumor. I didn't know that Sala had followed Quinteros. The last I had seen was that he had been linked to the job at Universidad Católica, and then when it went to Holan, things got a little quiet, and he's popped up in Tijuana. So that gives Quinteros and Xolos, I think, a different perspective here, because these are players that Sala has worked with directly and knows what they can bring to the table directly. That could increase a bid number because they know the value that these players could bring to the club. So that's where you're at. And I mean, I can't say it's really a surprise for Atlanta United to be involved in these kinds of conversations, because they're a big club and big clubs draw interest, and big clubs have players that draw interest. Little bit of a surprise, I guess, that it comes out now, and we see what happens. You've got roughly 3 weeks before training camp opens, and then, 2 months before the MLS season opens, and just under 2 months before you're playing in CONCACAF Champions League. Timing, maybe not the greatest situation, but welcome to the world of MLS and CONCACAF and the timelines that both operate on. That's where you're at. So does this reporting speed things up? Does it mean that things are close? Does it mean that things are imminent? I don't know if you can take that. I don't know if you can jump to that conclusion, but there is chatter afoot, and that's where we're at the moment.
Going back to an article in Forbes that Manuel Veth wrote late 10th month, October, about players and interest involving Atlanta United and just the difficulties of players in having them go inside MLS. Veth caught up with Vancouver Whitecaps head coach Mark Dos Santos, and this is just an overarching thing. And this is from the article. Gressel would demand a multitude of what Colorado are willing to spend for Lalas Abubakar. Mark Dos Santos. Abubakar for $1 million from Columbus to Colorado. This was a guy that was drafted. Good players within MLS right now are almost more expensive than players outside of MLS. Specifically, then it goes to Julian Gressel. Just Dos Santos talking here in the article. I like Gressel. I really like him. Even after his contract is done, his rights still belong to Atlanta. It's so difficult to get players inside this league. Veth continues, Vancouver is certainly one of many clubs that could try to swoop in for Gressel, but league rules make it very difficult for internal transfers within MLS. Quote, it is very hard, Dos Santos points out. So this is part of the whole equation as to what teams have to juggle and the hurdles that are involved if there's interest within the league. So it is part of the conversation, and when you are a winning club, you will always be a part of the conversation. You will always be in demand. You will always, when it comes to silly season, have articles about key players and locations and things like that. There's a reason we call it silly season. So, but yeah, I think that the timing of the release of the information from the Athletic is interesting, considering the timetable going forward for Atlanta United. So let's just say that yesterday was quite an interesting day.
Yeah, but let's clarify a couple things from what Mark Dos Santos said. When he was talking about that in October, the rumors about Lalas Abubakar were $1 million in allocation money. That was what was being put out there. He ended up getting traded for $400,000 and an international roster spot. That's one thing to keep in mind here. And comparing what Julian Gressel's done in the league to Lalas Abubakar is just, it's not correct. Gressel has been a far better player than Lalas Abubakar in terms of production in MLS. Potential and position, Abubakar might be a little bit at a premium because of youth and playing center back, but he didn't go for nearly as much as people were saying he was going to go for. That's a key. And we've seen trades of this magnitude in the league. We've seen a lot of trades of allocation money, actually, in the league this offseason. Darlington Nagbe, for example. Austin Trusty, also to Colorado. The Rapids ended up spending that $1 million that was rumored to be going to Columbus for Abubakar. They spent $400,000 there, and they sent $600,000 over a couple of different years to Philadelphia for Austin Trusty. So they were able to split it. But these are all big deals. I think Gressel would go for more than that in the league if it comes to that. But that's a key element here. The whole thing about retaining rights, if he plays out his contract, you're not going to get to that point. So that doesn't even fall into relevance here, because you're not going to do that because you're acting like a professional club here. And that's the other key, is right now, at this stage, today, you have Gressel under contract for 2020. There's been no indication that he has another option past 2020. So you're at that point where you have to make decisions. Now, we've heard the talk about negotiations. We've heard the quotes from Julian Gressel, and they haven't been happy. And that could be playing into this as well, in the sense that, okay, it doesn't look like things are moving at anybody's speed here. The player's not happy. Do you need to start to look? Because you can't wait until the summer window. You can't go into that point and say, well, we hope we can get a deal done, maybe, possibly, and wait and see, because at that point, he could sign a contract outside the league to leave on a free. You're not going to let a player leave on a free. Now, he couldn't sign a contract within the league to leave on a free. That part is I think, where Dos Santos is going with it. But you don't want to run that risk. You never want to put yourself at risk for getting nothing. And that's where Atlanta United is right now. You have to always be listening. The best clubs, the best teams that maintain a high level over a long period of time are always willing to make deals because you never know what can come available. Take the end of 2017 and Darlington Nagbe as a prime example. No one, when the 2017 season ended, expected Caleb Porter to walk away from Portland and Darlington Nagbe to be on the market. Porter left, Nagbe hits the market. That deal got done incredibly fast. You have to be ready at all times because you never know. You never know. We'll talk about another club that maybe took a swing at something because of an unexpected situation that became available. Miami, talking about managers. ESPN has a report. We'll get into that on the other side of the break. You have to always be ready, and you have to always be willing. And that's where you're at right now. You have a player who is in the final year of their deal. You have a player who has an option past this in Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, but a player who has consistently garnered interest. And you have a player in Tito Villalba who has been on the outside looking in of your lineup and has been trying to battle back from injury and hasn't been able to get consistent time. These are all situations where you have to be ready to make deals if the right deal presents itself. You don't make a bad deal, but if the right deal presents itself, you have to be willing to listen.
That's the bottom line. You know, when you're in demand, I guess it's definitely a whole lot better to have players that other teams are interested in and people knocking on your door than the other way around. And
well, you can't add more resources to get better. And you have to always be willing to get better. If you don't have anything of value, you're stuck. You just have to sink money into something if you can. And in a salary cap league, that's not the same thing. You can't do that. If you're a team in Italy, for example, and you've made some really bad signings and you have nobody that you can sell and you're just stuck, now you do have to worry about financial fair play, but you can just decide to spend money. In a salary cap league, if you make bad signings and you have players that have no value in trade value or transfer value in this case, you're stuck. You're in a bad spot. Or if you let things get to a point where you're letting guys go for a free, you're in a bad spot. You can't get better. You have to always be able to maximize your resources, and that's what you're talking about right now. It doesn't mean a deal happens, but it means that you have to be willing to make the right deal if it becomes available.
And listen, somebody's knocking on your door. What's it going to hurt to listen? You always have to be willing to listen, and then be in a position and have the willingness, I guess, to sit there and say, okay, to be better, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And that's with your current roster. It's not just bringing in folks to add to it with the resources that you have. It's with the resources that you currently have under your umbrella. That's the discussion here.
The other moves around the league to keep an eye on, Oscar Pereja on Colombian television said that Orlando City is, quote, very close to signing Independiente Medellin striker Germán Cano. Finer details of the deal are being worked on. Stephen Goff with a bomba at the Washington Post. DC United making a run at Brian Lozano from Santos Laguna. We talked about him previously because he was linked to LAFC, and it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense because they didn't have that need. DC's got that need. And designated player, it's going to be a transfer in the $10 million kind of range. I mean, that's where we're talking about. I think those are the types of numbers that were being bandied around a few weeks ago. Contract's going to have to be expensive too because you're talking about one of the top young up-and-coming players in this hemisphere. But it sounds like he's available. DC also, according to Goff, has one other South American, at least one other South American on their designated player target list. He doesn't have a name yet. So these are the reasons why you have to continually look to get better. DC is looking to spend more money than they've ever spent. Orlando is now a threat, and they're going to have to spend money to get Cano in on a contract. They're going to get him on a free, but they're going to have to spend some money on a contract for him. Cincinnati is looking to have maybe three designated players, new designated players in the team before the season starts. They're definitely looking to have two, and they might have that third one, and they're all attacking players. Teams are getting bold. Teams are getting aggressive in the Eastern Conference, let alone the rest of the league. In the Eastern Conference, your rivals are getting aggressive. So you have to always constantly look to get better, and that's what these conversations are all about. I know you guys have thoughts. We'll get to those on the other side of the break. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Be right back.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, December 20th. It's a Friday flashback. The question on our Twitter page at Soccer Down Here is your favorite MLS match of the last decade. I know a lot of people said 2018 MLS Cup. I'm not trying to poo-poo that at all. But are there others that are your favorite, not just because of winning the trophy, but matches that stand out to you over the last decade? Be curious to see what some of the different answers were. I figured MLS Cup would be the one that most people jump to, but I'm curious if there's others. So tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Let us know. We'll get into that in hour number 2. We'll also get deeper into the schedule side of things in hour number 2 as well. But you guys have a lot of tweets that we need to talk about.
Clayton Ploss says these rumors seem to speculate a lot of moves for a team trying to win CCL, right? I can't imagine any of these happen, but I fear they will.
You can still win CCL. I mean, is it ideal to have a bunch of turnover? No, it's not. But look at the Liga MX teams as well that are going to be involved in this. They're going through turnover too. They're just going to have a few league games ahead of time, and they're starting their preseason now. So they're going to have a head start, but turnover's turnover. It happens. It's never ideal. You'd love to be able to take a team, year after year and keep it together, but then you also run that risk of keeping it together too long. I don't think that's the case here, but it's just not always feasible. And you look at a club the stature of Atlanta United and where they are, and honestly, you look at really any club in this hemisphere in their different levels, and you do get a good bit of turnover season to season. You do get a good bit of turnover in these windows. I mean, Club America, Roger Martinez, their top striker, was linked to a move to Miami. Does that happen? Maybe, maybe not. Monterrey is going to be linked to moves once they get through the Liga MX final. Tijuana is one that's trying to get into the postseason in Mexico, and they're linked to all kinds of moves right now. So it happens. Doesn't mean that you're not interested in CONCACAF Champions League, because remember, just a few days ago, you had the Ezequiel Barco news about not allowing him to go to Olympic qualifying at the U23 level. That's specifically about CONCACAF. So It's not an all or nothing type of situation. If the right moves happen, the right moves happen. If they don't, I don't think any of these players are of the situation where it's going to affect what they give the club if they're still here. But I think you have to listen, and I think the players have to consider moves as well. I mean, look at it from the player side. Let's take the club side out of it for a second. If you're a player who can make more money in your next contract or make more money via a move to a team that has the ability to pay you more, the willingness to pay you more, you got to take it.
Yeah.
You've got to take it. That's how it goes.
Michael Head, I completely understand it is the silly season. However, if the reports are true that Atlanta United is shopping Gressel, help me. How would this be a good thing? How would you replace his production, much less his great ambassador work in the community? Help! ! #why?
Well, the community work a lot of people do, and that's not a knock. That's not a negative at all. It's just that there are plenty of players who are doing lots of great community work in this team, things you've heard about and things you haven't heard about. So that part pushed to the side. That's doable. How do you replace him? I mean, you're Atlanta United at this point. You're not reliant on scrubs. You're not. And Gressel, you got him out of the draft, and you got lucky. That doesn't happen with many teams and many draft picks to get what you've gotten out of Julian Gressel. But you have the ability, and also if you make a deal and you have a large return back to you, you're going to have resources to go make a deal, and you're going to have the ability to go make a deal, and you're going to be able to go have your pick, as has been said many, many times about Atlanta United in the market. You're going to be able to go have your pick of what you want. And the other thing to keep in mind as well is Atlanta United, as currently constructed, has 2 international roster spots. The one that Florentine Pogba was in 2019, and the one they acquired via trade with Columbus in the Darlington Nagbe deal. So you got 2 international roster spots. So you've got plenty of room to do things if you need to go get a replacement. I mean, the help me part, I just players do have these things happen where you see a team that has a player who outperforms a rookie deal, and then they want a new deal. And that team either can't afford them under the cap or has other priorities. And I think, honestly, at this point, I do think the CBA is the biggest holdup right now.
Yeah.
I think the CBA, because it is not the Heineman situation, it is not the Robinson situation, it's not these other deals where it's a player who is in the same kind of bracket that they would have been. Gressel would be going from a rookie deal, a decent rookie deal, but a rookie deal, to probably a player that would require some form of allocation money for them not to count as a designated player. Atlanta United doesn't have a designated player spot, so they've got to be able to deal with the allocation money side of it and the cap side of it, and that's where you're at. And that is very, very difficult to do in this situation. Players who are in the same type of contract spot, it's a lot easier to manage. This is a big change, and right now I think that's the holdup. Gressel is sounding impatient, and I get it. Talking about a career, you never know how long a career can last. You never know. Players have to get their money when they can get their money. But that loggerhead, I don't think there's much you can do about it until the CBA's done. GTUTD1.
Gressel. I love Gressel on and off the field, but the reality is now may be the best time to get value from a trade/sale. He's not a player with speed or technical and cannot create his own space or take defenders on 1v1. He does service well, but requires dangerous players around him.
I'm not going to be that negative about Gressel. I think he's a player who can do really well in this league. But there is a point to is this where you can get the most for him? It's a point in the contract situation where right now you don't have him under contract after 2020. And you've got to make a decision. Can you re-sign him? How much are you going to be able to re-sign him for? And that part you just don't know right now. Or is there an offer that is above and beyond what you think you can get for him? And if there is, you got to consider it. And you got to potentially take it and go get the next one. And that's always been Atlanta United's MO. When players have moved, you've went to go get the next one. I think that's the part that's left out of this in this discussion about how can you make this deal? Why would you make this deal? Why would you even consider it? Why would somebody be on the market? The replacement side of it. Atlanta United's done a pretty good job of that so far. So that would come up. It comes down to the point for me. It's honestly pretty simple when it comes to Julian Gressel. It's very hard to make a deal until the CBA is done. You don't know what it's going to look like until that happens. And you've got a player that, without that new deal, is going into the last year of their contract. And you can't run the risk of not being able to get something for them if you can't get that new deal done. You have to listen. And you have teams in this league that have a lot of allocation money to work with, or a lot of resources to work with, and could be very good trade partners. It's just a fact. So you have teams with needs, you have teams that might be desperate, and you have teams that might make a bad deal that turns into a good deal for you. These are the tough decisions that a front office has to make.
Michael Ruiz, a couple of different player points here. Actively shopping LGP sounds strange unless this is the highest value we get for him and can get someone even better to come in.
Let's stay on that
Tito.
one for a second. Let's stay on that one for a second.
Got it.
You've had offers before for LGP. Boca Juniors is the one that has come up multiple times. You do have him under contract for 2020, and you have an option beyond that, so you're not at the end of a deal. 27 years old. You would expect, there's no sign of slowdown. There's no sign of issue. He had an inconsistent year in 2019. It was still a very, very good one. It's a tough decision. It's a tough spot. If the offer is good enough, then, yeah, you're going to be able to go out and get the next one, go out and get the replacement. And that's what you're looking at. And, there were comments made last season. I think those comments were very different by the end of the year, and I thought they were very different on No Todo Pasa, on Te'ise, not that long ago. And he sounded very positive about Atlanta United and MLS. And I'm a little surprised that it came up. But you would go out and get a replacement starting center back using the money that you bring in from that kind of deal and the spot that is then open, because you're talking about a player that is already on a TAM contract. So that's where you're at if that happens. And yeah, most things in these situations, and I know a lot of you guys have played your football managers and your FIFAs, and you've dealt with the transfer windows in these games. And when you're in that situation, just think about it from that game perspective. You have a player and you have a number that it's like, I wouldn't make a move unless they hit this number, and then we'll talk. The whole idea of if they don't offer this number, I'm not getting out of bed kind of idea. Everybody has a number, and maybe that number is being either close or hit, and you have to consider it, and you have to look at what's next, because if you take, just for example, if you make that move, you bring in a good amount of money that's going to be able to be turned into allocation money that can be used to buy the player down, so they fit into the spot, and you go get a player that is 3 or 4 years younger. That's how you do business. That's how you stay on top, and that might be the time to do it if that offer comes up. I think the Xolos connection with Dario Sala also plays into this, because you're talking about somebody who worked with Leandro Gonzalez-Perez for 2 years here in Atlanta, and Tato Martino's staff would know what he would bring to the table for Tijuana, a club that is trying to get to that next level, and to be able to bring in somebody who's been a vital part of a championship-winning team and a team that's won multiple trophies. Tijuana would spend for that because they need that kind of player in a big way. So they're going to have a little bit of that desperate need that might up their price a little bit more.
Tito, I get it, but it makes me sad.
Yeah, for sure. Tito, in 2017 was one of the most explosive players in this league, and he hasn't been the same since he started having injury issues in 2018. And it was a poor 2019 in general. If and he's on a large number for that production over the last couple of years, and that's where you're at. So if a deal comes, then you probably have to make that consideration again, because it opens up another big chunk. And this is the thing that I think people are looking at this one way, looking at all these moves happening. It might not be in every move happens. It might be, and just follow me here, if you, especially the Tito one, because Tito at this point in this squad is not looked at as a definite starter, and he is on definite starter impact type of salary. If the right deal comes for that, and that spot opens up, and you're trying to re-sign Julian Gressel to a deal, that's the type of level slot you're talking about. That's it. So that could eliminate the possibility of a trade on a Gressel if a Tito Villalba move happens, because it opens up a spot. The point is that all of these moves might not happen. It might be one, it might be two, it might not be three, it might be three. But they do have a little bit of correlation.
And then his third one has to do with Gressel. He says, also, if I'm Gressel, I'm pissed. Now that I know Heineman makes around $900,000 on average over the next 3 years, Miles makes about $650,000. Also, he's in the bottom 25% of wages.
Hold on. Okay. Miles makes $650,000. There's nothing like that out there right now. Miles has signed a new deal that's not on any books yet. So hold on that one. And just in general, one, I think it's always risky when you start putting yourself into a player's head, and especially saying that a player is going to be mad because somebody else is making more money. I would be careful about that, because Julian Gressel was in a very different situation than Emerson Heineman when those contracts were signed. Julian Gressel was a college senior that was picked higher than everybody thought he would be picked, with no real consideration that he was going to do what he did. That's when his contract was signed. You can't look at a contract number after what they've done in the third year of it. You have to look at when that contract was signed. Emerson Heineman was a player that you traded a good bit for, a player who has appeared in a U20 World Cup, a player who has played first-team minutes in England and in Scotland. And Emerson Heineman, it's a safe guess, was brought in as insurance if you weren't able to make the deal finalized for Darlington Nagbe. Maybe the timeline was even after you had already tried to re-sign Darlington Nagbe to a long-term deal, as was reported when the deal happened, reported about last summer, that there was another offer for a long-term deal that was turned down. That's a replacement. That's a different conversation. If you start comparing dollars to dollars for different players who play different positions and signed contracts at different points in their career, you're never going to get a like-for-like comparison. It's never going to happen. And I think a lot of people who are saying, like, he's underpaid, he's on one of the worst contracts in the league, this and that, he signed it when he was coming out of Providence College. And he didn't have the standing to get a bigger deal at that time. And you sign it for the number of years you sign it for, and you sign it with the options that you have on it, and now you want more because your production has been there, and that is what a player should want. But there's a reason why it is what it is, and you can't compare it to other moves. I think that's a very slippery slope and a very dangerous way of looking at it for fans or for the players. I mean, not every player is in the same situation. Players who play different positions and different points of their career are in very different situations.
And then he says also Gressel's in the bottom 25% of wages. He's a top 25% of players minimum. It's a shame we can't come to an agreement with him.
But that's the whole point. It's not about where they are in the wages category. It's when he signed the contract. He wasn't in the top 25% of players when he signed the contract. He was a college senior coming out that was not expected to do what he's done. And there's been contract negotiations. There's been talk, and they haven't been able to come to a deal. That's how it is. That happens. That's what any player in any sport deals with when they sign that rookie deal and they don't have the leverage at that time, and they outplay it, and then they have leverage. They want to use the leverage. They want to get a better deal. Absolutely. But right now, the club has the leverage because the player's under contract. All right, what happens? We'll find out. But these are all fairly predictable steps of that process. You start to get comments, you start to get potential options or listening to trades or what have you, and decisions have to get made because ultimately Julian Gressel's going to get a new contract that's going to pay him a lot more than he's getting right now. And where is that going to be? And is there going to be a price to make it happen here? That's where it's at. But again, the bottom 25 of wages and top 25 of production. Top 25 of production is borderline, but okay, we'll go with that. Bottom 25 of wages, he signed the contract. He was not in the top 25 of production. And I hope that people aren't looking at this as a club trying to take advantage of a player on a bad contract, because that's not the case here. Rookie deals get outperformed in every sport, and in this sport all around the world. And then players get paid. When the production's there, players get paid. They get paid by somebody, and that's where you're at. Let's take a break real quick and come back, dig into the timeline a little bit more right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Final segment, hour number 1. Mike Conti will be joining us at 10 o'clock. We'll dig into Atlanta United's 2020 schedule. Then I dropped an instant insight over at 92.9 The Game yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to hear it, that was kind of my first reaction to the schedule. There's a few things that jump out to me. We'll get into that with Mike here in just a bit. More tweets from the Peeps right about now.
Tweets from the Peeps at Prophet of Mars 1 DMM. If you see a high-value player, parenthesis, a DP, linked to a Latin American team, it's almost guaranteed a rumor. Most of Latin American teams have low transfer budgets. Gremio has never spent more than $3 million on a player. We paid $15 million for PT. That gap isn't happening.
The reason I would say don't be that dismissive of it is Gremio is not your average case. Gremio is a team with money, and Gremio is a team that is potentially going to get a lot of money very soon. And it's a team with pressure. You know, when a team from your country goes on and wins the Libertadores and is now in a Club World Cup final against Liverpool tomorrow in Flamengo, pressure ramps up a little bit. And doesn't mean Gremio makes this deal. It would be their biggest deal ever for an incoming transfer. It'd be a surprise. It's not unrealistic because of what they've brought in the transfer market. So I agree in general. I don't know if I'd even say that. I don't know if I would say that it's always a rumor. It's almost always a rumor. I agree in general. You have to look at the clubs. You have to look at the clubs and what they've done generally, because you have some clubs that get linked to these rumors who are almost always going to develop their own players and sell them on and then reinvest back into their academy and develop the next one. That's how they operate. You get others that have bigger ambitions or are more willing to spend from time to time. So Gremio, they don't have the track record of pulling a move like the Pity Martinez move, but they do have the need to make a move like that and make a splash like that, and they do have the means to do it. So that's why I think you do have to at least pay attention, but I think it's unlikely. I agree, but they're going to have that push. Gremio is going to have that pressure in Brazil to do what Flamengo is doing, and how they respond to that pressure, we'll have to wait and see.
Matt Wagner, what's interesting to me is all the departure rumors for Atlanta United, but nothing on the inbound side. Don't we usually hear something by now, even if it's fake?
Yeah, sometimes. I have to go back and start looking at timelines and stuff. I think we have in the past, but we've had the spots or the potential spot opening up as the Miguel Almiron transfer out saga started. You don't have any of that at the moment, and that can also kind of carry over back to the previous tweet from Prophet of Mars about, all right, if a deal for Pity Martinez was imminent, then you'd be looking at the replacement. Then rumors might start. Then things might get going. With no replacements being talked about as of yet, maybe that deal is not actually in progress. You know what I mean? So there's not really a spot. I'm a little surprised we haven't heard about, TAM level players, because those kind of players get linked to an Atlanta United a lot. But look, I think the market's changing in terms of it's not just Atlanta that's getting linked to players in the categories that they used to. It's other clubs in this league too. I think Miami has gotten a lot of attention too. It's felt like a lot of people have been linked to Miami as opposed to just being randomly linked to Atlanta or the LA teams. So that started to change it a little bit. Also, we've seen plenty of moves that this team has made that didn't really have all that hype beforehand, didn't really have all that talk beforehand. They've done both. So without looking for a high-profile addition, like a big spend on an addition right now, I think that's why the rumors aren't really hitting at the moment.
Also on the board, Dan James. He agrees with Michael Ruiz. The only thing I can think of is that Gressel's at his peak. I can't see him growing any further, but I am no miss.
Refresh what Michael Ruiz said, because I don't remember. I'm sure others don't.
Okay. Going back to that whole chain.
Just you don't have to read
the
them,
Gressel, if I'm Gressel, I'm pissed not knowing that Hyman makes around 900. Bottom 25% of wages, top 25% of players minimum. Shame we can't come to an agreement with him that.
Okay.
Only thing I can think of is that Gressel's at his peak. I can't see him growing any further, but I am no mystic. So if we pay him, we either see the same production or less. Odds would say less. So
I disagree with that. I don't think you're going to see less yet. I think you'd see less in 3-4 years, but Gressel's in his prime. I don't know if you see more. I don't know if there is a jump to a higher level. That would be a valid concern, but I don't think you see a decline either.
And so Dan says, does the front office cash in now at his highest value or take the risk and pay for less production at a much higher cost? I think the business model that we've seen is that we would sell. My heart says pay him. My head says sell him.
I think you can do either. I honestly think you can do either. He's produced like a TAM level player. If you can make the TAM situation work and make the cap work, there's no problem in paying him what he's produced at, the level he's produced at, if you have the ability to do it. No problem with that. I don't think that's a risk. But right now, you don't know if you're going to have that ability. You don't know what you're going to have available at the moment with the roster as it is constructed today. You just don't know. But if other moves happen or a CBA gets done, which I'm not expecting that to get done anytime soon, I think it will get done before the season starts. I hope it doesn't have any effect on anything revolving around training camps or preseason or anything like that. But without knowing what your cap or your allocation money looks like, or without things changing with your roster, you're limited in what you can do with Julian Gressel's contract. I think you can pay him what he is deserving of based off what his production has been. But Dan brings up a point that I think you have to consider, and let's cross sports for a minute and talk about Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and those situations.
Yes.
One of the conversations about that was always, are you paying them for what they're going to do while you've got them under the new contract, or are you paying them for what they've done for you under a previous contract? When you start paying guys for what they've done before, you can get into a bad spot. Now, that usually happens with older players. That's not necessarily
Albert Pujols and the Angels.
Yeah, but that's not the case here. That's not Julian Gressel. Albert Pujols was, 34, 35, and he already had injury issues when he went to the Angels? Maybe not quite that old. That's not the case for Julian Gressel. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know. Don't go to Wikipedia. Julian Gressel's not breaking down at any time soon. But you've got to make sure that you sign a deal that is going to be valuable to you for the life of that deal, not what happened previous to that deal. I don't think you're running a risk of a decline. I disagree with Dan in that regard, but I think it is a valid concern that is this the best? Is this the peak? Is this the top? How long can you stay there? I think you can stay there for a while. But then are you going to do a 2-year deal? Are you going to do a 3-year deal? Are you going to do a 4 or 5-year deal? Like what are you looking at? And what kind of money are you looking at? I think if you pay him a TAM level deal based off where his production has been and where you expect it to be over the next few years, 2-3 years, that kind of deal, you're okay. You're good. And if you have the spot to do it, cool. But right now, you don't have the spot to do it. And that's the number one thing. It's not about feelings at this point. You don't have the ability to make the deal happen. You don't. If a spot opens up, or if cap space opens up, or if a player that is on a TAM kind of deal right now isn't with the club, then you're having a different conversation. Because you can at least expect that the allocation money system is not going to decrease spending in this league going forward. I think that is a very safe thing to say. You're not going to see a cutback in spending in Major League Soccer in the new CBA. So you can at least go from where you are and make an assumption about a new deal if you have a spot open. Right now, you do not. It is that simple when it comes to Julian Gressel. You don't have an ability to give him the raise that it's, I think, a safe guess that he's asking for, and that his production has warranted. But you don't have that spot right now. And it's not. I don't think it's a wrong request to ask for the raise. I don't think it's the wrong request to ask for time for the CBA to get done. But you're stuck, and that's where you're at the moment. And when you have these situations, other teams who are paying attention and are interested are going to start asking questions and saying, well, you're stuck, aren't you? We can help you with that. Here's a boatload of AM. It happens. So that's where you're at right now. That's the crappiness of the situation, to use a technical term.
Tafka, in referring to your boatload of AM, excuse me, disagrees with Mark Dos Santos. Tafka thinks it's not hard to move players in the league. You just have to have the fake money to do so. Gressel's a blue chip player. He'll demand at least $1 million in AM! Exclamation point.
I think that's where the numbers are going to start. I think it's reasonable. When you look at players who have moved for that kind of amount, yeah. I mean, the production would merit that kind of an amount. So if there's a team out there with that kind of AM to spend, then Maybe so. Maybe that's the deal to make. If there's not, or if it's not because then the other side, and you do have to remember this, I mean, you can make the deal, but is the other club, Club X, would they make that deal if they can't do a long-term contract? No, they wouldn't. So then you get into, does the player want to go to that club? And the club's not going to spend that kind of money on a one-year rental. So then it gets another level of complication, and that adds to the whole negotiating process, and that's where you're at. I mean, this is not new to, Atlanta sports. We've seen it so many times with players in the different teams around the city that, get to this point where they are due for a raise, they want their raise, and are they going to get their raise? It's, honestly, it's not even a sports thing. It's just a life thing, Right now, Atlanta United doesn't have the ability to pay Julian Gressel more. That could change. That could change before the CBA is done. That could change after the CBA is done. That's where you're at. So it might not change, and then you might make a deal. All those things are still on the table at this point. I think all are still things you have to watch for.
Daniel Price, moral of the story, Gressel was a better player than everyone has expected. He can play at a high level and is also a fan favorite. He's one of my favorite players. He deserves a better contract, hard stop. He'll get what he deserves, give it time.
Yeah, he'll get a better contract, and I don't think there's anything to point you in the direction that if Atlanta United's able to give him that better contract, that they would not want to give him that better contract. But salary caps, not fun, and they limit these types of situations. That's the whole point of the cap, that players have to move and teams don't build super teams because they have to refresh their roster. Soccer in general, you see teams refresh their roster all the time. Look at any team in Atlanta's situation. You're talking about a team that's in the top 30, 40 clubs in the world. You look at the top clubs in this hemisphere especially. You don't see a lot of guys who stay at a club for a long, long period of time. It's 2, it's 3, it's 4, maybe 5 years, and then it's move on because they play their way into a contract slot, and even leagues that don't have caps that club can't meet because they have more talent coming through, or they're able to then go get somebody cheaper and younger and develop them and then restart the whole process. So we will see how this goes down, but those rumors did shake the foundation of Atlanta soccer Twitter yesterday, that's for sure. And I'm sure there will be more chatter because welcome to silly season. That was your rude awakening to silly season yesterday from Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejko of The Athletic. Not a rude awakening to see the schedule. It's a pretty good schedule for Atlanta United. We'll get into that along with other shenanigans with our friend Mike Conti from 92.9 The Game right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, hour number 2. We tried to wait it out yesterday and get a schedule released because soon. It wasn't that soon. It was kind of soon. It was about an hour after we finished up. The schedule dropped. ESPN dropped it just a little ahead of time. We've been able to add to our list now, and Mike Conti and I have a dance card for 2020, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. It's always exciting. It's always exciting when schedules get released in any sport because you can kind of plan out your life, right? Now we know basically what our life is going to look like from February to October of next year. So I'm really excited. And I think now, the 17s can go out and start to plan, start to look ahead at maybe some road trips that they want to make. And to me, the big thing was I knew there would be 3 Western Conference opponents that Atlanta United would not play. And I was just hoping and praying, crossing my fingers that we'd get to go to Minnesota because we haven't seen Allianz Field yet. Mm-hmm. And we would get to go back to San Jose because Atlanta United and San Jose always play absolutely crazy matches. And thank goodness that at least we get those 2 fixtures. So I'm very pleased just from that standpoint alone. We get to see the Quakes again, and we're going to get to go to Minnesota for the first time.
So I want to get into one aspect of this that we thought would happen, and we didn't know exactly what it would look like, but how those matchups would come down. Atlanta United is not going to see Vancouver, Dallas, and Colorado. Dallas was the number 7 team in the West last year. They did get into the playoffs. Colorado, Vancouver did not. But they're playing all the heavyweights, which we expected for TV purposes. But you look at some of the other teams and you look at the schedules. Toronto got one where they missed out on LAFC. You've got some others that there's a wide disparity in strength of schedule going into the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Supporter Shield is a meaningless award now as far as I'm concerned because not everyone is playing. I mean, I hate to say it, but the Supporter Shield basically becomes a serving plate, a glorified serving plate. You can put fruit in there or fruit cake at this time of year or, chips and dip or something like that because it's not the same. If Columbus goes out and earns, 68 points playing a schedule where they don't have to see the best teams in the West, or if Orlando goes out and has a really good year and they got to dodge some of these really good teams in the West.
Oh, and you want to talk about Orlando for a second. Orlando doesn't see LAFC or Seattle.
Yeah. Or San Jose, yeah.
Right. Now, I get it. I mean, Orlando is, they're not a national TV draw, and the league is trying to protect its TV partners. And look, I mean, we would be sitting here this morning bemoaning the tragedy of Atlanta United not getting to play Seattle or LAFC or LA Galaxy next year. Like, no one wants to see that. But my point is you want to play everyone. And I thought the league did this very, very sloppily, and it could have been avoided. You could have gone for scheduling purposes only. You didn't even have to announce that you would have divisions. But just for scheduling purposes only, you could have worked it out in such a way where you have 4 divisions. You play everyone in your division twice. You play everyone in the opposite division once. You play everyone in the opposite conference once. And then you have a few protected rivalries between the 2 divisions. No one would even notice. But at least that way you're playing everyone at least once. I think the league really kind of blew it in that respect. And, theoretically, next year, Atlanta United should look at the possibility of 3 of the Western Conference teams they're playing this year rotating off the schedule, right? I mean, if it's truly to be fair and random and all of that, because the NFL, what a lot of people don't realize, the NFL schedules, who you play cross-conference and cross-divisional, that's worked out years in advance. You could go online right now and see who the Falcons are going to play in 2026 because it's a set formula. Right. It's worked out years in advance. I just don't like this notion that the league is going to discard competitive balance and just try to come up with the best fixtures for TV purposes. It's not fair, and it renders the Supporters' Shield a meaningless trophy as far as I'm concerned. Now, all that being said, you got to go out and win the matches that are on your schedule. I think Atlanta United, our fans should probably embrace being fans of a featured team. When you're a big club, these are unfortunately some of the consequences where you have to play LAFC in Seattle and LA Galaxy. That's great. I mean, let's embrace that. That LAFC fixture on ABC up against the Olympics on August. Well, it's the week after the Olympics, actually, on August 16th. I mean, that's going to be huge. Mm-hmm. That could be one of the most watched regular season MLS matches of all time. That's great. I love the fact that fixture is occurring. You're going to get Seattle before Euro 2020's final is played at the Benz at 12:30. And by the way, that start time is a huge advantage to Atlanta United.
Yes.
Don't overlook that. So, I mean, these are all good things. These are challenges that we should embrace as fans, and I'm sure the club will embrace it too. But then don't celebrate the Supporters' Shield as being an equitably won trophy this year. Because if some of those teams, like Toronto, like Orlando, like Columbus, go out and put up a big point total this year, it doesn't mean the same as someone like Atlanta or LAFC or Seattle, who had to play all the big clubs, all the tough teams across both conferences.
Now, let me get the opinion of both of you on this. In looking at the schedule, there are 2 stretches that I wanted to talk to you about. And Mike, let me start with you. Mm-hmm. The first #gaggle of games is, it looks like 6 matches in 26 days. In late May, you have Miami and Toronto within 3 days of each other at Mercedes-Benz.
Both
then
at home. Both at home.
Right. Then you go out to San Jose. Then you've got a bit of a break. You've got a weekend off.
One thing about that one, real quick.
Yeah.
San Jose does not play on the 27th. They don't play midweek. You do. It's one of 2 times that happens in the season.
Yeah.
And then the back end of that, it is at Houston on June 13th, at NYCFC on the 17th, then home to Philadelphia on June 20. So you've got those 6 matches
Philly doesn't
in
play
26
in that
days.
middle one.
Yeah. Let's go back to the start of this gaggle. You're going to use a charter for San Jose. I promise you that. If you're playing Toronto on a Wednesday and then you're at San Jose on a Saturday night, you're using a charter. Then you don't play for 2 weeks in MLS play because Houston's not till June 13th. What concerns me a little bit more about the stretch is actually having to play Miami on a Sunday night and then turn around and play Toronto on a Wednesday. I would much rather that be a Saturday to Wednesday turnaround. That's really tough. That's tight, going from Sunday night to Wednesday, but you have to deal with it. The back end of that, at Yankee Stadium and then turning around on a Wednesday at Yankee Stadium and then turning around and playing Philadelphia on a Saturday, that's going to be really, really tricky as well. You might be looking at, and I don't know what the CBA will end up looking like and if charters will be legalized or not, but you might be looking at going straight from Houston to New York. That wouldn't shock me. If Houston were a Sunday and then New York were on a Wednesday, I think for sure you would go straight to New York. So that's a possibility too. But that's not the stretch that concerns me the most, John. The stretch that, yes, and here's why. So let's run through this really quick. It actually starts in July. To be quite honest with you, it starts, well, really, after the gaggle of games that you just referenced. June 27th, Saturday against Columbus, Wednesday Montreal, Saturday DC, Wednesday New England, Sunday Seattle.
Yeah.
What concerns me about that is when you get to the end of that stretch, you're going to have Olympic training camps open by then, which means you're looking at Barco. If the USA qualifies, you could be looking at Miles Robinson. You could be looking at George Bello. You could be looking at Brooks Lennon. You could have a lot of guys out. And then you turn around from that Seattle fixture. Again, this is all during the Olympics. At Galaxy, at Miami, home New York City, at Minnesota, all during the Olympics. That really, really scares me just in terms of the quality of opponents that you're going to be facing, where you could be, I mean, we don't know for sure, but could be substantially shorthanded. And then on top of that, you could have U.S. Open Cup fixtures jammed in there as well. That scares me. That honestly scares me a little bit more than what you've got at the end of May going into early June, because a lot of things kind of rattle off very, very quickly. You know that Seattle and LA Galaxy are going to be very good. We think that Inter Miami is going to be very good. New York City, I assume, will be good. Minnesota, I assume, will be pretty good. And then at the end of that, you got to play New England, who I think could be one of the most improved teams in the Eastern Conference this year. And then 4 days after New England, you play LAFC. You should hopefully have your Olympic players back by then, but you know, what's the chemistry going to be like? Oh, and by the way, after you play LAFC, you play Orlando in a rivalry match. So
thanks, schedule maker.
Well, look, every team deals with it. You're going to have to play these teams at some point. And again, Atlanta United's got good players who are going to the Olympics. So this is what happens. Unless MLS changes their calendar, where they're not playing during the summer, you're going to deal with these challenges every year. So embrace it. And the thing is, like, when Atlanta United had their big gaggle of matches at a couple different points last year, I actually think it kind of jammed them into a rhythm a little bit. They ended up playing pretty well through all of that, even when they were shorthanded. So I know it looks scary when you look at the schedule and you kind of envision, wow, I mean, that's 6 games in 25 days, not including Open Cup, and you're playing good teams. That looks really, really tough. But honestly, I think sometimes that can force a team into a rhythm where you want to be playing every third or fourth day because you're playing so well. So that's the glass half full approach. You know, maybe it'll end up being a good thing that you get the match compression at that point of the season where hopefully you have things rolling, hopefully you're healthy, hopefully you have chemistry with each other and you're working well together, and Brooks Lennon's fully ingratiated into the team, and it's just all kind of working. I would rather have it mid-season than at the very beginning where you're trying to figure a lot of things out.
Yeah, the toughest stretch for me is that August run where it's at Minnesota, then New England, who I think is going to be really good and an Eastern Conference contender, then LAFC on short rest, but LAFC comes in on short rest as too. They're coming in from Cincinnati. Then Orlando. The trickiest part could be the last end of it. The Orlando at home, at Montreal midweek, which is a longer trip than you think, and then back home for Red Bulls. It's
the longest trip in the Eastern Conference, and the Atlanta to Montreal trip. And again, I don't know what the charters are going to look like. That's a bad flight. There is really a very limited option in getting from Atlanta to Montreal nonstop. Mm-hmm. And you're either on a small plane or you're connecting. And again, you're going Sunday to Wednesday, not Saturday to Wednesday. That part's really tough. I do like getting the extra day back when you come home to play Red Bulls. And I don't know what Red Bulls will be like. But, the one thing you can say is that I think the schedule does set up for Atlanta United to go into the postseason on a pretty strong foot. You end Chicago home, Columbus home, at DC on decision day, where hopefully you'll have some stuff wrapped up by then. I mean, right now that doesn't look too terribly intimidating. I think Columbus will be a lot better. The moves that they're making right now, I think they'll be a lot better. But you don't feel the same playing Columbus as you do LAFC or Seattle, just to be totally honest. So they're and really, I mean, if you look at the way the schedule starts. Oh, boy. I mean, at Nashville, it'll be emotional for Nashville, but then home Cincinnati, home SKC, at Chicago, at Cincinnati. I like that. You'll be in the midst of CONCACAF, but I like that. I think that's a favorable draw to begin the season.
Huge.
You're not playing Toronto, Red Bulls, New York City, Philadelphia, New England all in a row. You're playing Cincinnati, who's making moves but has a long way to go. Nashville, who again, that'll be an emotional night, but I don't look at what Nashville has done to this point and think that Atlanta United can't beat them on the road. SKC will be a lot healthier than when we saw them last year. That might be the trickiest match of them all. But I like that. I like that opening to the season. So if you can start strongly and finish strongly, I think you got a real chance. And the way the schedule is set up, Atlanta United should be able to start strongly and finish strongly.
Yeah, you don't have a 2019 playoff team until April 19th with Portland, and you don't play a 2019 playoff team on the road until you go to Philly on May 9th.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Now, I mean, there are tough games in there.
Kansas City
SKC wasn't a playoff team last year because they were hurt.
Right.
But RSL at home, I think, is going to be a real tricky one, that Sunday afternoon game. But yeah, absolutely. There are some really good things for Atlanta United in the schedule too. And here's another thing: you only play 2 games outside the Eastern and Central time zone all year. I mean, think about what we were doing last year, where we had to do the Cascadia in 3 different stretches. We had to go to RSL. We had to go to RSL after going to New York. Well, wasn't that Vancouver, back to Atlanta, to RSL? Or no, Vancouver, Orlando, RSL, New York Red Bulls, something like that. It was ridiculous, that kind of travel that Atlanta United had in May of last year. You don't have to do that anymore. You have one trip to Galaxy. We have no 5 stripes after dark.
Oh,
yeah, I know. Well, hey, what are you going to do? Maybe we'll make the declaration that. I'll tell you, Houston, 8:30 Eastern time. I think that would count.
That's the latest one we have. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll count that because there might be a weather delay.
5
they have a lot of thunderstorms.
It's Houston.
Right.
Yeah, there could be a weather delay.
Yeah. That is a little bit of a bummer, but that's also huge. If you want to talk about a team that really got hammered as far as travel is concerned, I thought the league was going to try to cut Nashville a break by grouping all those Cascadia matches together so they could stay out there. No, they have to go to the Cascadia teams in 3 different months. They do get the California teams all together, but it's over, I think, a 17-day period, which would be a long time to stay away from home. So the league really kind of hammered Nashville by putting them in the West and then not giving them a huge amount of schedule relief. And, oh, by the way, with Charlotte now coming in next year, the chances of Nashville having to be in the Western Conference for a second season in 2021 just went exponentially higher. So, in terms of the travel and the logistics and the routing that Atlanta United's going to have this year, way more favorable, way better than it was last year.
You look at the East, we talked about it a little bit. Columbus doesn't get LAFC, the Galaxy, San Jose, Orlando City doesn't get LAFC, Seattle, San Jose, Minnesota United in the West doesn't get Toronto, NYC, and Philadelphia. Dallas doesn't get Atlanta or Toronto. I mean, you're going to have a lot of folks, Mike, with a lot of talking points about this staggered group that we have this year.
Absolutely. Now, selfishly, I'm glad we don't have to go back to Dallas or Colorado. Not my favorite stadiums. So I won't. Hell, I mean, Colorado, we could get the plague, depending on if they've eradicated those prairie dogs or not. So, from a selfish standpoint, from a completely non-competitive standpoint, I'm fine with it. But yeah, no, I mean, again, I'll repeat myself. I think it invalidates the supporter shield because not everyone is playing each other. And again, it could have been avoided. Okay, so maybe Atlanta United only plays Montreal once, or only plays New England once, or only plays Chicago once. I'm okay with that if that means I get to play everyone in the league at least once. I'm fine with that. And you could have accomplished that, and you didn't. And that's unfortunate to me. I understand why you can't go over 34 matches right now until the CBA gets worked out. That's fine. I totally understand that. But it was avoidable. And I just feel like the league did not really think this all the way through. And these are not easy decisions. I mean, I'm not trying to claim that some radio guy in Atlanta has all the answers. These are not easy solutions, but I just think they could have done a lot better.
Yeah, I would take the solution where you're playing everybody in the league in some form or fashion than this one. But this is the route that they went with. I want to get your opinion and your take on the report over at ESPN this morning. It looks like Miami is now back to Patrick Vieira as their choice for manager, although maybe they didn't leave that choice, but maybe they did. We're also getting word that Arsenal has made the Mikel Arteta hire official, and maybe that complicated it because Vieira was linked to Arsenal there for a minute. Also, in this report at ESPN, Miami was interested in Carlo Ancelotti when he became available, but Everton offered a more lucrative deal. Is it going to end up being the situation where Vieira was the guy, but then maybe he wanted to look elsewhere, and then Miami maybe looked elsewhere, and then now we're back to Vieira being the guy?
That's the only way you could make it fit the narrative that Miami had a manager identified and practically hired months ago. Because that's what they've been saying, right? For months. Oh, yeah, we have our manager. We'll make the announcement in due time.
At Nice. Like, that's the thing. Is he's still got a job.
Yeah.
And he's active in the players and the expansion draft. He was active in that discussion process.
Well, no, the shadow manager was. I'm talking about
shadow
Vieira
manager
still has a team he's managing at the moment.
We don't know the identity of the shadow manager, do we?
No, that's
the question mark.
The reporting is, and our friend Jillian Sakovitz had this on Twitter recently, it's the same person that was involved in the expansion draft planning, and they're expecting to get the deal done by January 1st. Now, the ESPN reporting kind of mirrors that they're expecting to get it done by the end of the month. I really think that Arsenal opening was unexpected, and Vieira would be interested, obviously, if he could get in there. He's an Arsenal legend.
Yeah.
And then when Ancelotti became open, it's like, well, wait a minute. If you're looking over there, we're going to look over here. And neither one worked out, and now it's almost like, well, we're back where we started.
Yeah. If it ends up being Patrick Vieira in Miami, I think that's a good hire for them. I think he's a good manager. He proved that at New York City. It'd be totally fine. I don't know. I mean, how big of a splash were we expecting Miami to make with their managerial hire? You heard them linked to a number of splashy names. But I think Vieira would be a solid, safe, good choice.
It's okay. That's kind of how it feels to me. It's like, it's okay.
You could do way, way worse.
Oh, yeah.
Way worse
you could
than
go
Patrick
splashy
Vieira.
And risky, for sure. Like, this doesn't really feel splashy. This feels...
Thierry Henry is splashy, but very, very risky.
Yes.
And that's what Joey Saputo, that's kind of your perception of Joey Saputo, splashy but risky. Miami, as an expansion side, would probably be better suited going safer. But it's a good safe hire. It's not a safe hire that's going to be underwhelming. I think it's a solid safe hire if that's the guy. So I guess we'll find it. They're going to have to announce something pretty soon because their training camp's going to open in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to get this done. Remember, Atlanta United announced Frank de Boer. What was it? New Year's Eve last year or Christmas Eve? It was one of those. It was right.
I think it was a little earlier, but I might be wrong.
It was definitely on a Sunday during a Falcons game because we broke into Falcons coverage to report it.
Yeah, I remember that.
But remember, Atlanta United had a parade on December 10th.
Right.
So, you had to be respectful to Tata Martino and the hiring process that I guess was accelerated a little bit once you realized that Tata was not going to be back. So it's a little bit different for Miami starting from scratch. But they're going to have to make an announcement pretty soon. And if it is Vieira, I think we'll all kind of have that reaction. Oh, okay. Makes sense. All the timing makes sense. The timelines all kind of intersect, and Miami was probably telling us the truth the whole time.
Maybe, possibly.
Yeah, maybe, possibly. The
December
Colonel comes in this
23rd
morning
for de Boer.
Yeah. The Colonel comes in this morning and he talks about how each of the MLS sides release their team schedules on social media. He said that the Red Bulls Fine Art was the best. The Whitecaps and Gravity was number 2. He says Atlanta United's John Nelson era video game was too slow and long. Soldier Field Dreaming was okay. Better than DCU's The Office. He says he's not a fan. The Quakes are a letdown from the 2019 media winner, and Nashville missed the point.
I actually like DC's. I thought The Office was pretty funny.
I'm not a huge Office fan, but that was pretty good. I was okay with it. I didn't like the Red Bulls one. I'm sorry, Colonel. I didn't like it at all.
My thing is this. The league's got to do a better job. We knew for a couple days at least that the schedule was going to come out on December 19th. We didn't know what time, but we knew the day.
We heard.
The league did not even acknowledge that December 19th would be the scheduled release date until about 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's a fail by the league. That's a fail. You know, when the NFL puts their schedule out, there's a 3-hour TV special. Same with the NBA. I'm not saying we need to have a 3-hour TV special, but you could have done more.
Yes.
To build buzz and create a little bit of excitement instead of just dropping individual team videos. That's not on the individual clubs. That's on the league. I thought they missed the boat on that yesterday.
Especially with the news about ABC and Fox and so many games over the air, I would have led with that. That is where the league should have said, you know, we're going to announce groundbreaking coverage over the air TV. Your ABC and Fox games will be announced at 11 o'clock. 'Cause I think they put the tweet out a little bit before 10 o'clock yesterday. And get ahead of everybody, announce those games, and then say the rest of the schedule will be in an hour or whatever. Like something.
Yeah. I mean, again, hopefully next year they take a different approach because it's exciting, and I think it's exciting. We look at it from a different perspective, John and Jason, because you know we have to plan our lives around these matches.
Yes.
But a lot of fans are the same way. And, you know, I know there are people that were probably getting ready to book airfare yesterday to Miami as soon as they knew when that fixture would be, or you know, book airfare up to Montreal, which is a trip that we've urged a lot of people to take, or book airfare out to the Diggity to see LA Galaxy. By the way, I guess we now know that the Falcons are not going to have to worry about an Atlanta United conflict at the Benz in September because all the home fixtures are on Saturday. And I was even trying to piece together a few clues on the NFL preseason. We know the Falcons now can't be home on the 16th or the 23rd because Atlanta United's got the building. So that Corky Kell weekend, my goodness, August 23rd, you have Atlanta United. The day before, you're going to have Corky Kell. I know they did that 2 years ago, but the building crew is going to have a pretty busy weekend that weekend trying to get the stadium turned around.
A lot of overtime hours.
Yeah.
Ian Lundberg said that the MLS schedulers must be Toronto FC fans, Toronto avoiding LAFC Minnesota, Atlanta avoiding Colorado and Vancouver, both avoiding Dallas. Ian did the math. He says it's a 49-point spread in the 2019 standings between those avoided clubs.
Yeah. Again, now you don't know what Colorado and Vancouver and Dallas are going to be like in 2020. You don't know. But, I mean, I wish there would have at least been a perception of randomness that would have occurred with this. And you can still get Atlanta United to play Galaxy, LAFC, and Seattle by doing that. But this has got to be looked at for next year because the more teams you add to the league, I mean, if you don't change the scheduling formula next year, there are going to be 4 Western Conference teams that Atlanta United won't play next year. That's unacceptable to me. Yeah. That's unacceptable. You've got to go to divisions and work out a formula where you're playing everyone at least once and you're playing your rivals twice. And you can do that. It's easy. And then by playing everyone in the league, the Supporter Shield becomes a meaningful trophy again.
Yeah, I really think that there's going to be pushback on this when we start to get into the playoff race, because you're going to see some teams with big advantages of teams that they didn't play, and others that are going to be in a spot in the table that, hey, maybe they're not accustomed to, or maybe their quality actually shouldn't put them there. But then you talk about who they played and who other teams didn't. I think it'll come up as we get late into the season, and I hope it comes up early enough for adjustments to be made to scheduling for 21 and beyond, because you need to play everybody. At least that gives it, I think, a better appearance of balance.
Totally agree.
We'll see. We'll find out. We will not be talking to you on Wednesday, because we won't be talking on Wednesday. It will be Christmas, but we will be talking to you next Friday.
Yes, the Hawks are home. So yes, you are right. We will talk on Friday. And boy, got a lot of things going on right now.
Piecing your life together, brother.
Guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. SDH has been a big part of my year, and keep up the great work. Giving soccer fans in our city and our region the content that they so badly want. You guys have done an amazing job, and I really appreciate you having me on to rant with you throughout the year. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for being part of it, man, and Merry Christmas to you and the family, and talk to you next week.
Okay, guys.
Be good.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll get back into the tweets in just a second.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, December 20th. It's a Friday. That means it's a Friday flashback, and your Friday flashback question of the day was favorite MLS matches of the last decade. I know there's a lot of nominations for the 2018 MLS Cup Final, understandably, but let's see what all we have on the timeline right now on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. If you're hearing us now, let us know your thoughts. If you're listening to this later in the podcast edition, go ahead, tweet at us. Give us your take on this one or any other takes we've had today, and keep the conversation going.
GTUTD1 MLS Cup 2018. Shiva MLS 2018 says it was the best sporting experience of my life. And then Michael Ruiz off of MLS Cup 2018, he says that one obviously for all the reasons, especially fireball shots in the RV after.
Yeah, that would do it. I might skip the fireball shots, though. It's been a long time, thankfully, since I've had a fireball shot. obviously that one is high on the list for me. The other games that stand out from an Atlanta United perspective, the game in San Jose, that was insane. Honestly, the first two games with Orlando, but for me, even more so, the game at Bobby Dodd, the last game at Bobby Dodd. It's such an underrated game when you look back at Atlanta United's history. That was just a great atmosphere, great weather, great match. You had two great goals in it. That was where it really felt like, man, this is a huge deal. This is really cool. Honestly, the 2017 match with San Jose would be on the list too. The July 4th game at Bobby Dodd that had all kinds of chaos. Those are the ones that I think of. Let's see. The game in Portland last year would be on the list for me too. I thought it was the best Atlanta played in the MLS regular season. It was such a big win. Portland ended up not quite being what we thought they would be, but that was such a just solid, strong show of quality from Atlanta United that I'll probably always go back to that game. Campeones Cup as well. Like that week, that's the week that will probably come to mind when I think of 2019 Atlanta United.
Jorge B says his favorite match was versus Club America at the Campeones final. I was at the supporter section with my wife, and it was a crazy experience. The match was very intense from the beginning to the end, and that goal by Larry, hashtag panqueques for breakfast.
Yes, definitely that. That's got to be on the list, too. That was such an
especially the goal call by somebody in particular and the reaction.
It just went.
I thought that was great.
It wasn't that big of a deal. Jeez.
No, but it was. I mean, just the reaction of Jeff Larenowitz hitting that rocket and the reaction by you and Mike, it was absolutely priceless.
That's how you should react. It's a huge goal. That's what it should be. It shouldn't be like, and that's a nice shot from Jeff Larenowitz that finds the back of the net.
Nice shot.
Goal. It shouldn't be that. It should be crazy and loud and yelling and going nuts, and that's what it was. Other matches in MLS over the last decade that need to be brought to the fore here. The one that I thought of immediately was the Toronto-Montreal second leg Eastern Conference Final 2016. Bonkers. The series ended 7-5 on aggregate. It was insane. And great rivalry with Toronto and Montreal. That's when I started thinking about this, and I'm like, all right, after Atlanta United games, what would be on my list? That's the one that tops the list for me, no question.
What was it Seattle and Colorado in the snow at Dick's Sporting Goods Park?
I think so.
That one for me, just because of the visuals. I know the players hated it and all that kind of stuff.
The visuals, but it wasn't a good game. So
no. Katie Weaver, favorite Atlanta United match in person was MLS Cup 2018. Favorite one to watch was Five Stripes After Dark. When I turned it off in disgust, went to bed, checked in on my phone, and craziness ensues. Didn't watch lots of MLS pre-Atlanta United, but other favorite was watching the Sounders in the Dempsey-Obafemi era.
Yeah, there were some fun matches at that time frame for sure. Another playoff game that goes under the list is the double post game, Portland and Sporting Kansas City. Double post in the penalty shootout, and Portland ended up riding that all the way to MLS Cup in 2015. So that one gets on there for me. It's not Montreal-Toronto, but yeah, it's on the list.
Will Palmer says he made it back to Atlanta after a long drive. Glad to make it back home. For me, my most memorable game was the 18 match versus the Quakes. It was the game that got me listening to you guys every day.
Do you remember Will Palmer's driving story?
Was Will the one coming from Detroit?
Yes. I was like, you just said that, and it's like, Okay, yeah, there was more to it. He was driving back yesterday from Detroit listening to the show. So maybe he went into the archives after our live show ended yesterday and we didn't get a schedule yet.
KFC, very memorable game. I was watching round 2 of Toronto-Seattle in the brew house with folks who moved back home from Seattle. Torres being the hero was fun, but it was the shot-sharing, horn-blaring, and smile-wearing Black Sheep ensemble that made it amazing.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool. I think that's a big part of like favorite games when you look back is how you experienced it or who you experienced it with. Those types of things play into it. That's a cool story. And stories like that are big. I think for a lot of people, their Atlanta United memories revolve around, who they were watching the game with in the stadium or at a viewing party or what have you, or what they did afterwards, like fireball shots in an RV. Hey, cool. That adds to the list.
Yes. Five-stripe fan Mark Earhart. I can only speak to my experience with Atlanta United, but I have to say the best game I've seen so far was Campeones Cup. The pace was wide open. Crowd energy was amazing. Might not have been clinical, but it was a blast to watch.
Oh, it was a blast. The intensity. I don't care about clinical all the time. Like, clinical's great when it fits, but the intensity is also great. And that's a big element of these things. That takes a good game and can make it great. Those moments are very, very important.
Daniel has a couple of things. His favorite match that wasn't MLS Cup win was against Orlando 2018 where they threw stuff on the field, was at the match and had to be escorted out. Heck of an experience. Was my first away game.
Everybody was escorted out. Let's not make it look like Daniel was escorted out because he got out of hand. That's what you do with visiting supporters in stadiums like
Daniel
that.
got out of hand. That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
No, I'm not slandering anybody here on the show. That's not what I do. So, yes, the visiting supporters, because you are all together and you are protected by security and you are escorted out for your safety. These are things that happen in opposing venues like that. If you are part of the official ticket purchase and the official supporters groups and all of that. Daniel did not start throwing things himself.
And Daniel's next question, probably we could revisit starting next week, but I'll go ahead and do it here, and then we can revisit it again. He says, if you could bring any player home to celebrate Christmas, New Year's, or a winter holiday, who would it be and why? For him, it would have to be Lorenowitz on New Year's, and they have to make sure he holds the "Who Has a Beer" sign.
Okay. Yeah, we'll hold that one. I think Jeff would probably bring his own beer to something like that, but he'd probably bring beer for everybody. But,
Yeah.
I don't think he'd have to hold up the sign in that case. I hope not, anyway.
Jarrett has chimed in this morning. He's got a couple. Match of the decade. He says he's going to cheat and say the Eastern Conference final tie between Montreal and Toronto. And then also Portland and Seattle 2 years ago, where Portland players forgot PKs existed.
That was, 2018. And no, they didn't forget that PKs existed. They thought that away goals counted in extra time, if I remember without looking it up. And in extra time, away goals don't count as a tiebreaker, and both teams scored in extra time. They thought that a few players thought that they had won at the end of regulation, or at the end of the extra time period, and they did not. They had to go to penalties. That was 18. Okay, now I understand what Jarrett's tweet was. I was very confused.
Mike Foster, bonus points this morning. The Silverbacks beating Colorado 2-1 in the Open Cup with 8 players on the pitch in 2014.
Technically not an MLS match, but yes, that was stupid. Incredibly, incredibly stupid.
Oh, my goodness.
The Silverbacks win at home against Real Salt Lake in that Open Cup run as well was another really cool one. And a wild match. Even the one that they lost in the quarterfinals to Chicago was a wild match that they could have won. But they had a bunch of players red carded, and both of their coaches, their head coach Eric Winalda and their assistant coach Ricardo Montoya, were both suspended for that one, with being sent off in the Colorado match. It was kind of ridiculous.
Trying to get into
not
Silverbacks Park that night?
Yeah,
you couldn't.
Cool.
I mean, it was backed up on the RSL night.
It kind of was. Yeah, I mean, I think it was both times, because it's anytime there's more than 2,000 people going to Silverbacks Park, it's tough to get in and out.
I mean, it was backed up on 285 all the way up to Chambly Tucker Road, trying to get. So you're talking about a 1.5 mile backup, trying to get off the freeway to get into Silverbacks Park to park.
Yep, that
craziness.
Sounds about right.
Craziness during rush hour to add to all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What else is on the docket
too? Other games to add to this list. The first El Tráfico has to be on the list because of all the chaos and just a wild game to begin with before Zlatan even hit the field, and then that goal.
Yes,
it's got to be on the.
Oh, come on!
It was crazy.
John Strong was amazing.
Yeah, that phrase was getting used a lot at that time. And that was kind of the right one for that moment. It was nuts. What else? What other games stand out? The 2016 MLS Cup stands out for the wrong reasons. It's definitely not my favorite because Seattle ended up winning without a shot on goal. I was not watching it with people at the brew house going nuts with a bunch of black sheep and stuff. So, no, I can't put that one on my list because it was intense and had drama. I wouldn't say it was my favorite because I think for like my favorites, it's got to be either what we were saying, people you watched it with, or the experience you had with it. Some combination of fun, drama, wild plays, wild moments, something like that. Other MLS Cups in the decade don't really hit that level. And honestly, I mean, that's typical in a final. The most recent final, this year's final, might be one of the best finals of the decade. I didn't think Atlanta United was really challenged with Portland in 18. 17, Toronto blew the doors off and dominated Seattle. Seattle scraped through and won in penalties in 16. 15, Portland got that fluky goal at the beginning where Steve Clark got caught in possession and Valeri tackled it away from him. 14 went to extra time. 14 is actually an underrated one. That's one that I wouldn't mind going back and watching now to kind of remember it a little bit more. Galaxy and Revolution, where it went to extra time and the Galaxy ended up winning it. 13 was the one that was like 15 or 20 degrees in Kansas City, and they won in penalties against Real Salt Lake. 11 and 12, the Galaxy beat Houston in both, and I don't remember them being super competitive. 2010 was the weird one that was in Toronto where it was super cold, and it was the neutral site with Dallas and Colorado in the final that just had no buzz to it. It's a weird game. Makumba Kanji creates an own goal and tears his ACL in the process, and that gives Colorado the MLS Cup win.
Jarrett's adding the Krylock crane kick game.
You're saying that like it's a question.
I'm just trying to remember the when, not necessarily. He's adding the Krylock crane kick game. I just can't remember when that was.
Real Salt Lake beating LAFC in 2018 in the playoffs.
Okay.
And things were thrown at Nick Raimondo, and game was stopped at different times, and Krylock pulled off a ridiculous goal to be part of that win. There's been a lot of really fun games over the last decade. I mean, this is something that I think you're going to get a little bit more of until we turn the page on 2020, and I think the conversation then will turn more to looking back at the the 25 years of MLS and going into season 25 and all-time greats. But, we've talked about the best players, the team of the decade, best games of the decade. It's been a huge decade. I mean, you look back at 2010 and the final being in Toronto, freezing cold. Nobody cared in Toronto because it was Dallas and Colorado. It wasn't two big teams in the league that got there. And that was kind of the one where I think MLS said, you know what? This doesn't work. It doesn't always guarantee like a cool neutral site final. They've had those. In previous years, you had some memorable finals in neutral sites, but that was the one that showed this isn't where we need to be. We need to make sure that the final is a spectacle. It needs to be at the higher seed, so we have a home team in it. 2011 was technically a neutral site final, but the Galaxy won their way to it. It was in their building. Beyond that, it's always been at the higher seed. That's been a huge change for the league. And you just look back at, I think, where the league was in 2010 and where it is going to 2020, it almost feels like a different league. That's pretty cool. I think it's something that needs to be looked back at and needs to be, you need to remember where it came from, because then I think you have a better understanding of where it is, and especially where it fits in the grand scheme of things and what could be next. And that's what we're starting to see when you're getting some of the rumors that are out there right now that we haven't touched on yet. We mentioned Brian Lozano potentially to DC United, 8 figures I would expect that to be. Cincinnati's looking to get 2 or 3 designated players before the season kicks off. Colorado's linked to a couple different potential designated players, French winger and also a number 10 from who's Danish/Moroccan who plays in Russia, Yunus Namli. You're talking about a $6 million offer that is reportedly on the table for Cecilio Dominguez, a Paraguayan international at Independiente. You've got MLS teams in maybe bidding wars with players from Brazil, players from Ecuador, players from Colombia. It's a really interesting time, and even just in the last couple years where it went from Atlanta United and they're new and they know they have money, so they're linked to everybody, and the Galaxy were always linked to everybody, and then LAFC's been linked to everybody, to now it's teams that you wouldn't expect that are making these deals. It's cool. Another rumor on the board is FC Dallas goalkeeper Jesse Gonzalez drawing transfer interest from European and Mexican teams, according to The Athletic. And this was one that I think there were some whispers of this last year, but not anything concrete. A French team negotiated to get him in a transfer window last summer, but it fell through. Gonzalez is a young goalkeeper, he's part of the U.S. national team pool, could potentially move up into that pool. He made the switch to represent the United States instead of Mexico. I think he should be considered. He's been really good in his pretty young career. He's 24. He's still got a lot of room to develop, I think. A couple other things in that report at The Athletic that got everybody talking yesterday. The general manager or sporting director, whatever they end up calling it, in Charlotte, that person's expected to come from abroad. They did make a hire, though, and it's, I think, a pretty important one. They added Mark Nichols, who was the academy director and director of player development for the Seattle Sounders. He's going to be part of the front office. He's going to oversee the academy. He's going to be involved in recruitment and development for the first team. This has been the question about Charlotte, was how fast would they hit the ground running? That shows you. I don't think they're going to waste any time. And whoever that GM sporting director is, they get that person in place soon. They'll be in great shape to start making moves in 2020 as they prepare for their first season. The other big news that we haven't had a chance to dig deeper into the details on is NWSL, Reign FC being acquired by Lyon. That deal is expected to be closed in January. They held the press conference. Olympique Lyon Group will hold 89.5% of the new entity. Former Reign FC majority owners Teresa and Bill Predmore will have 7.5%. That leaves 3%. It's going to be Tony Parker, former NBA champion. He is chairman of the current French men's and women's basketball champion, and he's also an Olympique Lyon brand ambassador in the United States. He's going to take that 3% stake. It's kind of cool mix. You know, you get Lyon, who's been at the forefront of the women's game in Europe. You have Reign FC. You have the Predmore family will stay involved, especially around the academy. And you get a little bit of the publicity of a superstar like Tony Parker involved. Seems like a brilliant fit, and they're going to stay in Tacoma, and they're going to continue that partnership and play in Tacoma.
Yeah, they're going to stay at Cheney Stadium. Can we get the breaking news sounder?
Sure. It's actually the Thunder and Lightning, but okay.
We now have the kick time for Atlanta United and Motagua.
We have the kick time. Do we have the day? Because that's the one I was a little more worried about. Okay, cool.
18 February 2020, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Motagua and Atlanta United.
Oh, we do have Five Stripes After Dark.
So we have we have the times for the matches in the opening salvos. 8 o'clock is Portmore and Cruz Azul on the 18th of February. Motagua and Atlanta United at 10 o'clock on 18 February. Also at 10 o'clock, Leon and LAFC. 8 o'clock on the 19th, Saprissa and L'Impact du Montréal. 8 o'clock on the 19th, Alianza and Tigres. 10 o'clock on the 19th, Comunicaciones and Club America. 8 o'clock on the 20th, San Carlos and NYCFC. 10 o'clock on the 20th, Olympia and Sounders. And that's where we are.
Okay, that's just for the first games. We don't have the second games.
Don't have the second games. That's just first game.
Okay, and what is your source from this?
Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League at the Champions.
Okay, that is an official source. All right, let's see here. I believe, are they going to announce the second legs, or did they stop? It looked like they said they were going to do the full round of 16 schedule, but I don't see it yet. So 18th, that is what day of the week? I don't have a calendar in front of me. Tuesday.
Okay,
so that's the Tuesday. So I guess it's a safe guess that you would be on the Tuesday the following week, especially with Atlanta United playing a league match on Saturday after that. So Tuesday would be the guess. But they have not made that announcement as of yet. And maybe they are going to stop just at the first legs. I saw the first tweet and was like, oh, okay. They said, we heard you. It's time to release the round of 16 schedule. The round of 16 has a second leg to it. We just don't know it yet.
Oh,
so there you go.
Now we do. We
Yay,
have that.
There we
have that
go.
well.
All right. Hold on. I need to hit the Thunder and Lightning again. There it is.
From CONCACAFChampionsLeague.com, their own selves.
Well,
the return legs.
They just haven't tweeted it yet. Come on. You got to tweet it first, then post it.
Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern, Atlanta United and Motagua. So it's Tuesday.
Yeah, that's what I figured. All right.
10 o'clock, Cruz Azul and Portmore. 4 matches Wednesday. Interesting start time. 6 o'clock Eastern, NYCFC and San Carlos. 2 at 8 o'clock, Montreal and Saprissa.
Weird.
Yeah, that's very.
In New York?
That's what. Hey, return leg. 6.
They're going to play at Yankee Stadium at 6 o'clock?
Wednesday, February 26th, 6 o'clock. NYCFC and San Carlos.
I
2
can't
at 8
wait
o'clock.
to hear what the Pigeons fans have to say about that.
Montreal and Saprissa, Tigres and Alianza. 10 o'clock Wednesday night, Club America, Comunicaciones. Those are the Pigeons right now.
Yeah, they're calling
Thursday,
yell.
Seattle and Olympia, LAFC and Club Leon are the Thursday matches, both at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So Atlanta United is Tuesday.
Speaking of the Pigeons, there's more buzz from the website The Outfield about stadium stuff and things being done behind the scenes and progress being made and meetings being had and renderings being posted and acquired. Go check out is it theoutfield.com, if I'm not mistaken? Org.
They're an org.
Theoutfield.org for that post. Definitely appears that there is more progress than has been publicly made available, which is completely understandable. The renderings look pretty good. It makes sense. The design makes total sense because of the footprint, because it is kind of wedged into a section. But if NYC pulls that off, that's more power to them. They have to. They have to get something done. And if they get this one done, then that's a pretty good fit. We get more thunder and lightning because that's just what happens at the end of the show. The New England Revolution have acquired a new designated player. It is the player that we had previously expected, Adam Buksa from Poland, 23-year-old Polish youth international. He has only played in Poland. He is a new designated player for the New England Revolution to add to an attack already featuring Gustavo Bo, Teal Bunbury, Carlos Heel, Christian Penilla. Good side. That's a good side. Bruce Arena's not messing around.
Nope.
Not messing around at all. It's going to be a fun 2020 season. And I think our silly season has only really kicked off in the last couple of days. It's only going to ramp up. And it's only going to get sillier. And there's only going to be more rumor and innuendo and diversion and outrage and throwing things and yelling and stomping of feet and potential madness and all of that stuff wrapped into one. But we'll be back on Monday to talk about it, and we'll get you set for what happens over the weekend, and we'll get you set for the week to come, because I don't think silly season's going to take a break for the holidays next week. We'll talk about all of that on Monday. A couple more on the favorite game, and thanks to Jarrett in our conversation here on our direct messages, because he added a couple that I had forgotten about that have to be on the list. The DC Red Bulls second leg in 2012 that was snowed out, and DC had to drive back to DC on the bus, or at least supporters did, and then back the next day. And they won on a late goal. That the game was nuts to begin with, let alone the fact that it was supposed to be played the day before and it got snowed out. Bill Hamid was sent off. He lost his mind. That was the game where he was yelling at people either after the game or even during the game as he was being led down the tunnel, and he said they can't hold us back. It was the game where he tweeted at the NBC broadcast while he was in the locker room after being sent off, and called Kyle Martini. Then the penalty that led to the send-off was initially scored, but Thierry Henry was basically like patting Kenny Cooper on the back. He had encroached so much. So it gets retaken, and then Joe Willis makes the save. Then Rafa Marquez committed a second yellow card foul, just a horrendous tackle on Chris Pontius, and he gets sent off to even it up. And then Nick De Leon scores in like the 87th or 88th minute. It was stupid ridiculous. The other one that Jarrett mentioned, the tunnel fight with Sasha Kleshtin and Josie Altidore.
Oh, yeah. Vanny running his mouth, yeah.
Yeah, everybody running their mouth. No, Vanny wasn't running his mouth as much as Jesse Marsh was. Let's throw the running of mouths where it needs to be. And that was where Josie Altidore said something about people getting those hands afterwards. And there you go. So that's another good one. Yeah, those are good stuff.
Howard from Soccer Metrics has the Portland 4-4 match against Seattle in the 2014 regular season. Chara had a double. Dempsey had a hattie.
That was stupid. It was like an afternoon game, too. That was a stupid one as well. That's one. This is why they need the MLS channel like on something and actually be programmed to throw these games up and have like the MLS stupid game of the day and like tell people to tweet about it, like, you know, hashtag stupid game
live
MLS
tweet,
or something, and live tweet it and all kinds of chaos. Like, give us these games, these madness, ridiculous games, either because it's 4-4 with hat tricks or players tweeting at broadcasters and calling them Kyle Martini. Give us that stupidness. Give us all of that stupidness. We'll have more stupidness for you next week, but we will have stupidness with Crumpets and Espresso later today to preview soccer over there for the weekend. I know I'll be talking about the Club World Cup final, Flamengo and Liverpool, tomorrow, 12:30. That's been moved. Like, Fox has been crazy with this thing. Like, Fox didn't advertise much of them showing this in English. That game's going to be on Big Fox tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
They moved it to Big Fox. Originally, it was like Fox Deportes made an announcement, and then games just popped up on FS2. That game's going to be on Big Fox with Liverpool and Flamengo. That should be a fun one tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that one, too.
Plenty of games around the world to talk about on Crumpets and Espresso. That'll be hitting later this afternoon. Thanks, y'all, for being part of the show this week. We'll be back on Monday live with you at 9 in the morning. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.